Picture this. You finally have your green card in hand after years of waiting, forms, and stress. You think the hard part is over. You're a lawful, permanent resident now, free to live and work in America indefinitely. But then one day, you try to re-enter the United States after visiting family abroad, and the customs officer pulls you aside. Your heart sinks as they tell you there's a problem with your status. How could this happen? You followed all the rules, didn't you? Here's the reality that catches thousands of green card holders off guard every single year. Getting your green card is not the finish line. It's actually the starting line of a whole new set of responsibilities and rules that many people simply don't know about. Some of these rules seem almost counterintuitive. Others hide in the fine print of immigration law. And breaking them, even accidentally, can put your permanent residence and your entire future in America at risk. I'm going to walk you through 8 critical USCIS rules that surprise even long-term green card holders. Some of these might seem obvious once you hear them, but trust me, they catch people by surprise every single day. Whether you just received your green card last month or you've had it for years, this information could save you from a devastating mistake. So let's dive into these rules that every green card holder absolutely needs to understand. The first rule that shocks people is about international travel. Yes, you can travel outside the United States as a green card holder, but here's what many people don't realize. If you stay outside the country for more than 6 months, USCIS can question whether you've abandoned your permanent residence. And if you're gone for a full year or more without getting a re-entry permit first, you could be denied entry back into the United States entirely. I've heard heartbreaking stories of people who went to care for sick relatives abroad, stayed longer than planned, and came back to find their green card was no longer valid. The immigration officer at the airport has the authority to make that determination right there on the spot. Even if you come back before the 1-year mark, spending long periods abroad repeatedly can establish a pattern that suggests you don't actually intend to live permanently in the United States. The key here is that permanent residence means exactly that, permanent. The U.S. needs to be your primary home. The second surprise involves your obligation to file U.S. taxes. This one catches a lot of people completely off guard. As a green card holder, you're considered a U.S. resident for tax purposes, which means you must file U.S. tax returns reporting your worldwide income, even if you earned that money in another country and even if you're currently living abroad. Let me say that again because it's so important. You have to report income from anywhere in the world to the IRS. This applies whether you're working in the United States or overseas, whether you have foreign bank accounts, investments, or property. Failing to file can have serious immigration consequences beyond just tax penalties. USCIS looks at tax compliance when you apply for citizenship, and lack of tax filing can be used as evidence that you've abandoned your permanent residence. Some countries have tax treaties with the United States that can help you avoid double taxation, but that doesn't eliminate your filing requirement. Rule number 3 is about maintaining your registration. You're required to notify USCIS every time you change your address within 10 days of moving. This isn't just a suggestion or a good idea. It's actually federal law. You can do this online through the USCIS website using Form AR11, and it takes just a few minutes. But so many people simply forget about it or don't realize it's required. If USCIS sends you important notices to an old address and you don't receive them, you could miss deadlines for responding to requests for evidence or even court hearings if you're in removal proceedings. Missing those notices won't excuse you from the consequences. The government assumes you received their correspondence if they sent it to your last registered address. Here's rule number 4, and this one surprises almost everyone. Certain crimes can make you deportable, even if they seem relatively minor. We're not just talking about serious felonies here. Even some misdemeanors can trigger removal proceedings. Domestic violence convictions, drug offenses, including simple possession of marijuana, even in states where it's legal, fraud, theft, and crimes involving what immigration law calls moral turpitude can all jeopardize your status. What makes this especially tricky is that state law and immigration law don't always align. Something might be a minor offense, or even legal under state law, but still be considered a deportable offense under federal immigration law. If you're ever arrested or charged with any crime, even something that seems minor, you should consult with an immigration attorney immediately before accepting any plea deal. Many people have pled guilty to something small, not realizing it would make them deportable, only to find out years later when they apply for citizenship or when they're pulled into removal proceedings. The fifth rule concerns military service and selective service registration. If you're a male green card holder between the ages of 18 and 26, you're required to register with the selective service system. This is the same requirement that applies to U.S. citizen males. Failing to register can have serious consequences down the road. When you eventually apply for citizenship, USCIS will check whether you registered during that age window. If you didn't, and you don't have a valid reason for not registering, your citizenship application can be denied. They may determine that your failure to register shows a lack of good moral character, which is required for naturalization. The registration process is simple and free, and you can do it online or at any post office, but you have to do it during that specific age window. Once you turn 26, you can no longer register, and if you missed it, you'll need to explain why when applying for citizenship. Number 6 is about your actual green card, the physical card itself. Your green card has an expiration date printed on it, typically 10 years from when it was issued, or 2 years if you received a conditional green card through marriage. Many people mistakenly think this expiration date means their permanent resident status expires. That's not quite right. Your status as a permanent resident doesn't expire, but the card itself does, and you need a valid card to prove your status. You should file to renew your green card about 6 months before it expires using Form I-90. If you let your card expire, you can face problems. You might not be able to work legally because employers verify work authorization through the unexpired card. You could have trouble traveling because airlines may not let you board without a valid green card. And while your underlying status technically remains intact, proving that status without a valid card becomes much more complicated. Don't wait until the last minute or let it expire completely. Rule 7 deals with conditional permanent residence, which applies primarily to people who got their green card through a marriage that was less than 2 years old at the time the card was granted. If this applies to you, your green card is only valid for 2 years, and you must file Form I-751 jointly with your spouse to remove those conditions within the 90-day window before the card expires. Missing this deadline can result in automatic termination of your permanent residence and being placed in removal proceedings. Even if you're still married and everything is legitimate, missing that filing window creates serious problems. If your marriage has ended or you're separated, there are waivers available, but you still must file during that same window. This is one of the most common ways people accidentally lose their status, simply because they didn't realize the deadline or thought their status would automatically continue. The 8th and final rule that catches people by surprise is about voting. This seems straightforward, but the consequences are severe. Green card holders cannot vote in federal elections and in most state and local elections. Even if you're registered to vote by mistake, perhaps because you checked the wrong box on a motor vehicle form, and even if you never actually cast a ballot, being registered to vote can be treated as a false claim to your citizenship. This can make you deportable and permanently bar you from ever becoming a U.S. citizen. Some states and municipalities allow non-citizens to vote in certain local elections, like school board elections, but you need to be absolutely certain that you're legally allowed to vote in those specific elections before you register or cast a ballot. When in doubt, don't register and don't vote. Wait until you become a U.S. citizen. The risks far outweigh any benefit of participating in elections before you're eligible. Now that you know these 8 critical rules, you might be feeling a bit overwhelmed. That's completely normal. Immigration law is complex, and the consequences of mistakes can be life-changing. But knowledge is power. By understanding these rules, you're already miles ahead of where many green card holders find themselves. You can take proactive steps to protect your status and your future in America. If you found this information valuable, do me a favor and hit that like button so more green card holders can discover these important rules. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications because I regularly post content about immigration, citizenship, and navigating life as a permanent resident in the United States. Drop a comment below and let me know which of these rules surprised you the most, or if you have questions about your specific situation. Remember, while this video provides general information, it's not legal advice. If you're facing a specific immigration issue or you're unsure about how these rules apply to your circumstances, consult with a qualified immigration attorney who can review your individual case. Your green card represents years of effort and your dreams for the future. Protect it by staying informed and following the rules. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.